It's after 9 o'clock, I believe, by both. It's after 9 o'clock, I believe, by both clocks. It's 9:02 by my cell phone. It has been properly noticed. Can we have the roll call?
Tim Hood.
Present.
Fred York.
Present.
Chris Gilbert.
Here.
Tom Oxford.
Here.
Roger Wilson.
Here.
Fred Horn.
Here.
Dan Brinscott.
Here.
Dr. Ramsey. Deb Rasmussen. Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 10th, 2012, 8:30 a.m. meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I do have one question. It was my understanding that reading from somebody else who had a letter that could not attend, is that our precedence that we are now going to allow other citizens to read comments from other people?
Is that an issue if it happens?
Well, I'm just saying that then in the future, is this board going to allow people to read in minutes from or read in citizens' comments so that particular citizen isn't here?
I guess I was looking to Corp Counsel, but I'm going to say personally, I don't have an issue with it, but obviously you do, or there is some issue.
We don't have any rules right now regarding the public comment. It's something that could be addressed in the rules and bylaws, but we just have as public comment, someone can either speak about anything they want to, whether it's on the agenda or not. So I think it would be appropriate for them to read a letter from someone else because they can talk about anything. It doesn't even have to be something on the agenda. The public comment time is for them to talk about anything. So I think it's appropriate. We can address it in the rules and bylaws in the future about if we want to specify that, you know, you can only speak to your own opinion, not someone else's letter. That can be something that we can address down the road.
Thank you. Very nice second.
Comments? Because actually we don't have to have a motion in a second under our works now, so it's so if there's no other corrections, basically the minutes stand as distributed, approved. Then we get into public comments. We have a number of comments here. Sorry, put the microphone on. So we have a number of comments, a number of people want to speak. I know this is a very emotional issue. I'm going to ask that there be no, we don't want to degrade into name calling. Let's be professional. Let's speak to your points. Just keep it on the, I don't want to degrade into name calling and that type of stuff. Let's keep things positive. Even though I know it is a very emotional issue, this decision on the nursing home is ultimately going to be decided by the full county board. The resolution in front of this, the Health and Human Services Board today, is a recommendation to the full county board. So October 2nd, full county board is where the ultimate decision is going to be made. So with that, what I'm going to do is there's a number of people who want to speak. I'll call basically how I have the papers in front of me. I'll call the first name and I'll call the next person basically on deck. We do have a microphone here and a podium. I'd ask you to come up here to speak. And being that there is a large number of people, let's maybe limit the number of minutes that you're going to be speaking. We want to be fair to everybody. I know previously it's been suggested 3 minutes. I'm not going to sit here at a hard, fast time watch, but be respectful of everybody. Tell us what you want to tell us, and keep things positive, I guess. First one is Ellen Ard. So Ellen, if you can come on up. After Ellen will be James Mayer.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As we all know, the nursing home in Richmond, the St. Croix County Health Center, was devised and founded by our predecessors in 1897. Its doors opened in 1899. The reason for this, And there was great debate between Baldwin Hammond and New Richmond and Hudson as to where this facility would be placed. New Richmond was founded to be the site because of its location, because at that time it was felt that it served the greatest number of population in the county. It has had a long and prestigious history. It is a 5-star nursing home. The care is unprecedented as you look at records of other care facilities. At the September 10th meeting, we all listened to a report which stated that all of the new facilities which are either have been redesigned or are coming about in the county are filled. We have the opportunity to take a long-standing facility known for its care and turn it into an entity that will not only stand on its own, but will serve the persons of this county for generations. We have a large question that no one has addressed. Whilst new developments are wonderful, we have a large majority of persons, and even greater, following the crash of 2008, who will not be able to afford these facilities. And they are not required to take Medicaid nor Medicare patients without supplemental insurance. We need to consider where these persons would be cared for and why we would send a member of anyone's family 20 or 25 or 30 miles or even further away from their home and the people they know. You can look at as many reports as you'd like to, but it is a fact that a senior, especially with a medical condition, who is away from familiar surroundings, family, and friends, does not last long. We need to place humanity above the dollar. Thank you so much.
James Mayer is next, and then Rick Prokash will be up.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks to the committee and the chairperson and to all of you for coming and to this wonderful facility here. It's a good example of what is provided by government for our purposes and at our not necessarily so expensive expenses, which I think need to be far more specified than I've seen them done in the past, per household, etc., that we know is lacking. Nonetheless, I'd like to more or less reinforce what was just said about the record of this establishment and what was said about people who can or cannot afford supplementary insurance and so forth, as well as quickly review the history as I have been able to see it from the point of view of a regular citizen of the county. That is that we've had 2 or 3 times, 2 exact big clear times with referenda that have certainly rejected the notion of closure of the St. Croix County Nursing Home. And we've also had, jumping up to the last committee meeting here, when the question of closing was dealt with, that was basically rejected by this committee. And the question that I have before you and me is, why are we continuing to keep that back in the agendas for talking about as a serious matter? The privatization, we all know what the definition of privatization is. It's it's continuing to spread the responsibility and liability and costs for things and privatizing the benefits and profits from it. And that is one of the things that this issue deals with. I am wondering why we haven't so far seen a move by our board, as well as the people pushing the board, to make a recommendation that we indefinitely postpone or remove from consideration closure. And I hope that somebody from here on will make sure that that happens, leading up to the recommendation to the board at large to remove closure, whatever our rules tell us to do. That may have to do with postponing indefinitely or some other that'll leave the motion that'll leave to the wisdom of this body and the body at large. Thank you very much.
Rick Prokash is next, and then Bob Johnson is on deck.
Twice now this has been voted on by the public. You've asked consultants many times for their opinions on things. You're missing a large group of consultants, the voting public. They have told you twice now. I understand that there's, the thought is that they don't know as well as maybe you know some of the numbers or whatever. Just understand that those people that you say that may not understand all the things about what are behind the scenes with the nursing home, they're also the ones that voted you in. So maybe they didn't know who they should have really voted for. Is that really what you want? This nursing home has become a very emotional football. It's been kicked around way too many times. It is time to say, stop. The voters have told you this. And I've even heard, let's ask them again. And it's kind of, why? You keep getting the same answer. It is time to start putting things, just let it go. People want this. They're willing to pay for it. I was at a park here last month that I've never been in St. Croix County before. Nice park, didn't even know it was there. Does that mean that you shouldn't be having parks because I haven't been there before, or that I don't need it, or haven't been there? First time in 20-some years I was at the St. Croix County Fair last year. Does that mean that we shouldn't support a county fair? There are things that we support that the people want. The nursing home people want. There was a question on the referendum that was voted unanimously to keep it. The very next day, this committee voted to go down to 50 beds. That was like a slap in the face to the voters. And it continues to this day with this referendum, or this topic coming up for consideration. We've told you, keep the nursing home. Thank you.
Bob Johnson is next, and Kim Dupree is on deck.
Just some thoughts. The baby boomers are about ready to need these facilities. The Republican Congress decided they wanted to eliminate the budget for nursing homes by 3/4. So that's going to put a real need on low-cost facilities. And lastly, I think it would be unchristian to close this home.
Pronounce that correct?
Good morning. Just like to say there's been a lot of big numbers thrown about here at the committee and also in the newspapers. $2 million a year, $20 million over 10 years. Lots of big numbers. But let's compare that with some other big numbers. The county levy for the past 10 years has been over $250 million. The county budget over the last 10 years has been over $800 million. Lots of big numbers. It sounds like a lot of money. But how does that really apply to me, Joe taxpayer? So even if the nursing home had a levy of $1 million, which is a lot of money, that amounts to $20 per family per year. In other words, that's about $1.50 a month per family per year. That's what it means to Joe taxpayer. And I think that's why the people voted for this. It is worth it to them for $1 a month for their family to know there's a safety net out there, someplace that will take them. As our county board has said, county board chair has said that this really isn't a financial decision. This is a political decision. And so the board is entrusted with making a political decision. This is obviously not a financial one. And they also need to make good business decisions, such as 4 out of the last 6 years, an outside consultant has been running the home, an outside consultant agency, Pathways. That has come to the cost of $1.2 million for those 4 years of time, according to a report I got from the finance department. So in the 2 years that we did have an in-house employee, he was worried not just about making more revenues and cutting expenses, but he had a long-term vision for the home. And he drove the levy dollars downward, an in-house employee, as opposed to the outside consultant firm, from out of state, by the way. So that's a business decision. Another business decision is to house 50 residents in a building that was originally designed for 126 residents. Now, I'm not an expert, but it just seems like if you have a barn built for 100 cows and you've only got 20 cows in it, that's probably not a good business decision. There's going to be inefficiencies and overhead costs that you're never going to be able to overcome. So I asked for that business decision to be considered when it comes to building a new home. And lastly, is it a good public decision to obviously put at the mercy of the public market, or the private market, I mean, the people who can't afford care, as was alluded to earlier. If people don't have the money, is that up to the private homes to provide that when they don't have to? Is that a good public decision? I guess in my mind, if Dunn County can do this, if Polk County can do this, there's a way to get it done. And we depend on the board for the kind of business decisions needed to get it done and make it work. I have here an ad from 2008 from the Friends of St. Croix Nursing Home that said that the home would cost $20 per tax parcel per year. And that, in 2008, was what was approved by the voters. $1 million on the levy, right here. If you don't believe me, I'll pass around the paper. October 26, 2008. So we know the public supports it. The Hudson paper came out and said the will of the people should be the ultimate trump card. The Hudson editorial. So I beg you to listen to the people, and I ask that you make good business decisions to make the home viable, because we know other people have done it, and we know we can do it too. The people have spoken. We have a long-standing tradition of caring for our own here, and we ask that you respect that long-standing tradition. Thank you.
There we go. Then Norman Matzik will be next.
Good morning. On September 9th at 7:30 in the morning, I called 911. My husband was very ill. He was basically unresponsive. They took him to Westfields, and they made the decision, since the VA did not have an empty bed, that they would send him to Regions. On Tuesday, they started talking about comfort care. Lo and behold, 8:30, Wednesday morning, he was sitting up on the edge of the bed. Didn't know where he was, didn't know what was going on, but he was sitting up on the edge of the bed. Okay, then they started talking about hospice. Kind of scary for me. He improved a little bit. I knew he wasn't a candidate, but I still wanted to get him, because they told me that he would have to go someplace between the hospital and home. There's only one place I wanted him to go, and that was the health center. Okay, his mental ability, and even his physical ability, and his impulse did not make him for a candidate for the health center at that time, and I understood that. But he continued to get better. Okay, they wanted to lock him in a memory care unit. I didn't want that. So my children and I talked to my husband, informed him that he would not be coming home for a while, that he would have to go someplace in the meantime. Okay, he was accepting of that. It took him a while, but it finally processed that he would have to go someplace else. So I let that process, at which point I suggested the health center, and he thought that was a great idea. He was taken off one-to-one. He was taken off alarms. He was taken off of IV fluids, which, you can't take at the health center. And I realized that. Okay, so I called Lisa again on Monday, because I didn't want to bother her on the weekend, and told her how much he had improved. Of course, they still were pushing for a discharge. I was able to get him into the health center, where I know he will get the best care They admitted them on Tuesday. All I can say is, thank God. And I feel for myself and for a lot of our employees, the families, that they know that they will get good care. And I think that they want their family members, if anything happens to them, like it did to me, they would want them to be at the health center also. I read someplace that because of all these new buildings, that there would be a decline at the health center. Well, Osceola, I believe, is full. Deerfield is full. And how close is the health center to being full? Is it full? Okay. That closure theory right there. All I'm saying is, let us do our job, you do your job, but this is an excellent facility. And I know that if something happened to me, that's where I would want to go. Thank you.
Norman Mattson, and Shirley will be next.
I'd like to address the issue of finances that's going on at the nursing home. And I have a handout for people. And I would say, board members, as the nursing home finances show in the handout here that we're passing out, we have apparently experienced two different business models. One by Frank Robinson, which focused on increasing revenue by changing patient mix, more Medicare, private pay residents, and at the same time, trying to maximize patient census. Pat Thompson's business model appears to be focused on reducing both revenue and patient census. Mr. Thompson started...
Norman, let's not get into the personal attacks. That's all I'm asking.
Well, I didn't mean this to be personal attack. I just meant it to be a summary of what is going on, okay? Position in June of 2011, and Administrator Robinson left his position September of 2011. In the first quarter of 2012, Pat approved and Fred had promoted Larson Allen's Trent Fast analysis, comparing the then current 72-bed, the 57-bed, and the 50-bed scenarios, concluding that the 50-bed alternative was the lowest cost at $298,000. I asked what happened to the legitimacy of this scenario compared to huge 1.5 million losses being described for the nursing home today at the 50-bed level. As a seasoned business analyst, I cautioned Trent Fast at the HHS board meeting that the inability to forecast such a large number of line item variables accurately mean that all three of these scenarios were statistically the same. Therefore, you would not make a business decision to change your current operation based on this information. Pat decided to go forward with the 50 beds anyway, and the day after voters had approved the 66% for the second time to support the nursing home. And when and why would Mr. Thompson try so hard to quickly get rid of beds, going from the 72 to the 50, when there were comments by Fred at HHS that indicated some state changes may be in the works? At April 25 HHS meeting,
Norman, can you kind of summarize?
okay, we're getting there.
We
Said
can
that
all read this, but
he was taking, well, there's not every copies for everyone. Personal responsibility for the cutback in admissions. In doing so, he has cut revenue by an estimated 1.2 compared to 2010, and another $1 million that's planned in 2013. In an ongoing business, you do not purposefully reduce revenue. It appears that the nursing home is being managed not to minimize losses, but to shrink operations, increasing losses.
All right.
This, I believe,
Norm.
represents a
Norm.
gross mismanagement.
Norm,
Okay.
I think we've got your point.
Okay.
We've been about 4 minutes now, so I think in courtesy to everybody else, maybe we can, a last sentence, and then we can
Okay,
move on.
let's start with hiring a new administrator as talented as Frank Robinson to work with a very caring and highly skilled staff. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And then Shirley's next, and then Buzz will be the last.
Do I have 3 or 4 minutes to speak?
3, 4 is pushing it. We want to be respectful for everybody.
All right.
I hope you understand.
I'm Shirley Matzik, and I'm a citizen of St. Croix County. I have never worked at the nursing home. I've never had a patient at the nursing home. I'm really speaking about my concern about how we vote in our county. Last week, I actually spoke to this board briefly about this. And then a few days later, in a local newspaper, some striking comparisons came to light. At that time, many people wrote about the importance of our vote, reassuring me that I'm not alone in my concerns, that our voice counts. I think Kim referred to Editor Stolberg's remarks, so I don't need to give them again. I'll pass this out to you. There were other letters, though, from Hudson citizens. Michelle Teagan said, without the knowledge that their vote will matter, my generation will find somewhere else to live, somewhere else that respects the rights and values that I learned growing up in this community, in this nation, that each vote, each citizen matters. Dan Bushman wrote, that translates to a belief that we, the voters, can't be trusted with votes because we don't know better. That is arrogance beyond words. And without naming names, I've had someone say to me that they know better than what I know as a voter. Person is probably in this room today. Mr. Bushman goes on to say, we all have a voice and a vote. Voices are being ignored, but they can't ignore votes. Jason Munich said, I witnessed the death of democracy Thursday night in the city of Hudson at the hands of a few members of a planning commission. And I can relate to those words because I feel that's what's happening with this board regarding our vote. There were 2 other letters to the editor. Am I allowed to say the names of the people who wrote them?
Sure.
All right, 2 former county board members, Steve Hermson and Sharon Norton-Baumann, were always trying to close this nursing home. Mr. Hermson stated that the referendum question is a tool used when a governing body can't determine the wishes of the public. And I kind of looked at that and said, huh? The public voted twice with the same outcome. Apparently, there are still a few in power who don't like the public's wishes. We, the people, made a choice to value the county home, and we want to keep it as a safety net for, in Mr. Hermson's words, every class of people. Ms. Norton-Baumann spoke about the finances. I think that's already been addressed. So let me say this. Even if the support on the levy is over $1 million, we the people want it on the levy. We want to take care of the less fortunate in St. Croix County at the only 1/2 penny, which Kim showed as $20 a year, 1/2 penny per day required. I repeat, even if you keep this current budget at the proposed $1 million to be paid by we taxpayers, we approved this by a 2/3 vote, and we want it on the levy. And just like Editor Stolberg said this week. We have to respect the wishes of the voting public. Thank you.
On the business items, updated consultant report on St. Croix Health Center Nursing Home.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. I had already moved the card over to my apologies.
You're too young to be having senior moments. Good morning, and thank you for the privilege of speaking. I apologize for my hat. My eyes have become increasingly sensitive to light, and this is how I cope, so bear with me, please. What I'd like to do is read before this group the letter which I sent to my supervisor, Tom Hawksford, and I'd like to conclude with some remarks about justice. Dear Tom, I can't tell you how disappointed I was when I learned that at the September 10th Health and Human Services Board meeting, you introduced a motion that a resolution to close our county nursing home be forwarded to the county board. That short-sighted act certainly does not reflect the will of those who elected the current board to office, nor does it say much about your willingness to listen to those voters who, in the two distinct and consecutive referenda, unequivocally indicated their willingness to continue their unconditional support of our nursing home with their property tax dollars. In the summer of 2008, just prior to the 2008 referendum, shortly after the Eau Claire County Board had voted to close its nursing home, Colleen Bates, vice chair of that county board and chair of its Health and Human Services Board, sent a multi-page letter to each member of the county board, the St. Croix County Board. In her letter, Colleen indicated that, in retrospect, the Eau Claire County Board realized that the closing of their nursing home was a regrettable mistake, and that it was now costing Eau Claire County substantially more to farm out those of its citizens who required the kind of care its closed nursing home had previously been mandated to provide and had been able to provide at a significantly lower cost. In 1625, in his well-written essay titled Of Studies, Francis Bacon wrote, "Read, not to contradict and refute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider." Tom, I strongly urge you to weigh and consider, and to carefully study and reflect on the long-range consequences of closing our county nursing home. Attached with this note to you is a copy of what I had asked to be given to you on September 10th, and I was the person, Mr. Kilber, who asked that my letter be read. I was not able to be at that Health and Human Services Board, and I'm grateful to you for allowing that to have been read into the record. My concluding remarks have to do with what I learned at a very young age, had to do with the three forms of justice: associative justice, commutative justice, and distributive justice.
Buzz, can we summarize? It's been 3 minutes already. I'm just asking if you could summarize.
May I ask if the body here present objects to my concluding this?
Let him talk.
Continue talking, but please do summarize.
Thank you, I will try. With associative justice, it's a pay-it-forward process whereby I treat you with dignity and respect, and you in turn do likewise to others. Commutative justice, on the other hand, is a quid pro quo process quite similar to the golden rule, whereby each of us exhibits and exercises reciprocal justice toward one another. And finally, with distributive justice, we do for those what they are not able to do for themselves. I strongly ask that anyone in this room who has voting authority bear those principles of justice in mind as you contemplate what we're going to do with this 5-star nursing home. Thank you sincerely.
Business items, updated consultant report from the St. Croix Health Center Nursing Home. Fred?
I spoke briefly with Larry Lester, who provided a report to the board on September 10th. There was also mentioned that Brian Chenick may be involved in a review, and both Larry and myself, as well as the finance department and nursing home administrator, have also reviewed all of the data with Brian as well. Larry may give a brief overview of some updates from the meeting that was referenced on September 10th that was happening with the state. And I believe that's when you and Brian had a chance to talk about your presentation and some of the options that have been discussed. So there's not a significant update, but a little bit of an update that Larry can provide as a result of the meeting on Thursday, whatever specific date that was.
Yeah, really, everything we kind of talked about being preliminary at that point, because the state hadn't brought their proposal to us, really is included in the state plan that will be submitted to CMS on the 28th. So the one question that we won't know relates to the phase down or the closure and the additional funds available. As it reads right now, that phase down provision is tied to the construction of a new nursing home. So in essence, you would phase down from 100 beds to 50 beds and construct a new nursing home. They would give you that phase down dollars. So whether it would be available if you just closed your facility wouldn't be known until you submitted an application to the state. All of this, even the construction of a new 50-bed facility or 40-bed facility, would be subject to approval through an application process. And what the definition, or what it says in the methods of reimbursement, which is the document that kind of oversees this, is that the states, one of the states' identifiers on which projects they will approve is how much the potential savings are to the state. Okay, so when we talk about, I'll say, replacing a 50-bed nursing home with a brand new 50-bed nursing home, there's probably going to be very little savings to the state in that model. As we go to a 40-bed, if we were to look at that, there is some savings, and the reason they identify savings is just so everybody understands, is the state's determination, whether you agree with it or not, is the patients that you say you would no longer take care of because you're a smaller facility, they're making the assumption they would be serviced in an assisted living or a CBRF. There's no reason to debate that because that's what they've already decided when they put their model together. Whether it's that specific person, because again, remember, as we talked about at the previous meeting, there's a lot of empty beds in the state of Wisconsin, and their fear is kind of what we talked about right now is if those empty beds remain out there and the baby boomers get to be age 85, and remember, that's when we're talking about the baby boomers using long-term care, we're talking about them being 85 for the most part, unless it's a Medicare type service. So it's out there ways. But the bottom line is if the system stays the way it is today, okay, so we care for people in the same methodology we care today, the state budget will not support this model when the baby boomers turn 85. There's just too big of group of people coming in to need services so remember, their idea is can we keep people in their home longer, can we keep people in the community longer, can we keep people in assisted living longer, and that's their basis for this incentive to downsize nursing homes, okay? So just keep that in the background. But again, everything else we talked about, it has went forward in the state plan, so there would be additional funding if you built a new nursing home and it was approved, and or there could be potential funding for the phase down if it was approved. So otherwise, that's about it.
May I ask a question? Did I misunderstand you that the state is willing to incent downsizing? That's kind of what I came away from last week when I was there, that because of the condition that you said, people in home care, other things that the state wants to incent places to reduce capacity.
Right.
To push this other issue. Is that what you're saying? Did I understand that correctly?
That's part of the incentive. The other part of the incentive is to replace the existing facilities, the older facilities. So there's a two-part incentive out there. Whether they would just take, in essence, half of that incentive and say, yeah, we want to get beds out of the nursing home, out of the state, and would they say, that's good enough to approve this? We wouldn't know until we applied for it, okay? So, but yes, that's the two components is, and when I say replace facilities, it's not building the same facility you have today. It's also that idea of how care is delivered in the facility. And again, as we talked about in the last meeting, the easiest way to identify the change they want to see is, right now, we bring the residents to the services in most cases. So we have a large dining area, we bring everybody to the dining area. We have a large activity area, we bring everybody to activities. The new model, if you look at the Spring Valleys, is there's dining on each household or each unit. So they dine within their neighborhood or group. So we're not just talking, and that's why when you talk about, because the rule actually says renovation or replacement. The problem is any renovation to get to a household model would mean significantly moving walls and stuff, and when you're looking at a brick building, that's not going to be feasible. So for your purposes, it's really replacement that you'd be looking at. So, but it is a two-part. Yes, they want to get empty beds out. Secondly, they want to incentivize providers to replace their older nursing homes.
Thank you.
Maybe this question was asked at the last meeting where I was absent. So we had been at 72, reduced to 50. Is that too late to, because essentially to get the funding for building, you have to reduce from where you're at?
Well, and the question, again, everything is subject to application. So what they're saying right now is they're going to look at your average daily census in 2011. And I think when I look back at yours, it was about 54 residents or something like that. So technically that would be your starting place. Even though you're already at 50 beds, I think we could get them to agree that we're going to start at 54. And then the key isn't how many beds you have to give up. The key is that it has to be budget neutral, and there's a specific calculation to do that. When I did it just from a high level, because I don't have construction costs or anything, that I came up with it had to be about a 40-bed facility to give up enough residents in order to make the financial budget neutral for the state. They won't approve any application that they deem is going to cost the state money. And like I said, there's a very specific formula. It's not arbitrary. You can't argue it back and forth on. It's a very step-by-step process that they go through. I ran your facility through that, and I figure it's going to have to be about a 40-bed facility, depending on what the construction costs ended up being.
Other questions?
Larry, what do you see just overall from a reimbursement perspective, the trend?
Well, again, and I think some of the comments of what are they going to do when the baby boomers get there? That's a scary thought to me. I mean, whether it's you guys own a county home or not, that's a scary thought to me, because really, if you go back to the late 90s, the state has put almost no new dollars into the Medicaid program for that whole period of time. And so, I mean, this year we're talking, they gave us the Social Security increase that Medicare, that was passed last January. So they gave us that money, which really isn't state money. and then they gave us money for the increased acuity in residents. In essence, residents are getting more that the nursing homes are caring for are sick. But that was the only funding dollars that were put into the program, and that amounted to about 1.2%. So even if you look at inflation, and even though inflation isn't extremely high these days, they're not covering inflation at the state level. Because there are empty beds in the system and we continue to provide quality care for what they're willing to pay us, they have no reason to change that until access becomes a problem. Okay? Because why would you pay, I mean, if you could buy a car for $500, even though it costs somebody $1,000 to build it, if the market is willing to do it for $500, and that's what we've done with the empty nursing home bed. I mean, the fact that an empty bed filled with a Medicaid patient is still revenue coming in, and because there's a lot of empty beds in the state, there's no incentive for the state to change because they can find people to provide the care, good care, at the rates they're paying today. Okay, now, obviously supply and demand, when you think about the baby boomers, supply and demand is gonna change, right? We're gonna go from empty nursing home beds, unless we change how we provide the care, to but not enough nursing home beds. Again, and we're talking probably, you know, if you say the baby boomers are just starting, we're talking 20 years from now, because they have to be 80, 85 years old. But it is, I mean, that's the trend that's coming. Again, if you think about how much they underfund the nursing homes now, and you think about that big bubble of people that are coming into the system, and think about that impact on the state budget, and without an extreme increase in tax or an extreme increase in the economy, they're still not going to be able to fund it. I mean, and I don't know what the answer is, besides you might want to, you know, have long-term health insurance when you get that money. But that's something that, again, it's far enough out that nobody even at the state level is even looking at. I mean, they're trying to balance the budget for next year, obviously, so. But. So no, do I see any significant increases in the Medicaid rate over the next few years? No, I don't.
You see it remaining flat? I think that's kind of what I
usually, I would say usually somewhere between, you know, 0.5% to 2%, just because of the kind of the things that go into that they have to fund. They have to fund the acuity increase. That's actually in legislation. So that typically is like 1% in additional funding. So it won't be zero, but it definitely won't be inflation or inflation plus. It's more of the things they're mandated to provide that they'll continue to provide. And just, again, kind of one thing that would change that has been talked about, I don't know if you're familiar with the Bourne Amendment is the term that they use. The state used to be required to pay the average nursing home cost in the facility, so they actually had to calculate what the average cost in the state was, and it was required because of that Bourne Amendment. That actually was taken out, and so that's when we started to see, I'll say, the funding shortfalls. And there's been talk about trying to bring the Bourne Amendment back, but again, when you look at budgets, that's a hard thing for anybody to really do. But just so everybody understands why was it, quote, better in the older years and it's gotten pretty tight now. That's the key piece of legislation that occurred.
When did that occur?
Probably late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in that area. So.
Help me understand the thought that if we did build new, that 40 beds is the right number. Because it seems like from what we heard earlier that it was the reduction in beds that has created the bad financial position we're in. So it seems like we're still heading in that direction.
Well, I guess, I would look at the Osceola facility, which is a 40-bed facility. So again, it's going to depend on the payer mix more so than the facility size. Obviously, any nursing home today that's 100% Medicaid is going to lose money. I don't care who they are. They're going to lose money just because of the inadequate reimbursement. So it's not so much, would I go below 40 beds? No, I wouldn't go below 40 beds. Would 40 beds be tight? I think 40 beds would be tight, but remember...
Financially tight?
Financially tight.
Okay.
Remember that if your census in 2011 was 53 or 54, whatever that was, the state's not going to care that you were 72 beds. They're going to care at what that starting point was. And what did somebody say, was it 59? So whatever that starting point was, that's what they're going to be concerned with, not how many licensed beds you had at that point in time. Because there's there's a facility in Wisconsin that's got almost 60 empty beds. They're actually giving up empty beds to the state costs the state money, because we pay a monthly bed tax on all beds, not just occupied beds. And so as you give up a bed, you quit paying a tax on that as the county or any operator. And that tax, not only is it paid to the state, but it's also subject to federal match. So the $170 a bed you pay as a healthcare center a month really is $425 a bed to the state once it goes through the federal match program. So they don't want you to give up empty beds. They want you to give up occupied beds, because their theory is, and whether it's this facility or not, their theory is, in general, there are people in the nursing home getting care that could be cared for in a lower acuity setting, whether that's assisted living, home care, or whatever. And their support for that is they look at the number of people per 1,000 that use nursing homes, and they compare it to other states, and Wisconsin is higher than a lot of other states. That's their, I'll say, systematic, or their calculation, that they say, well, how can you justify that comment? That's how they justify it. So
one more question then on that. So it seems like the way you described the two programs, one being downsize and you can get some incentive money, close, and potentially, I know those both application processes, but both programs, both incentives are there to push those numbers down, right?
Right.
Not to grow, not to expand, but to reduce.
If you would say to grow, it would really be, if needed, it would be on the assisted living side. They would, if you think you need that many beds, their program would allow you, let's say again, you're a 50-bed nursing home, they're much more comfortable with you having 40 nursing home beds and 10 units of CBRF, which probably is too small, but that's what they're pushing, is ultimately, and again, you'd have to look in your own area and say, is there enough assisted living, is there not? Because obviously if you built an assisted living in an area where there's already enough assisted living, it's going to be empty, or somebody's going to be empty. So, but that's really that care model of, they'd love you to start a home care agency. Okay, they would probably incentivize you to start a home care agency, again, if it's necessary, and you can show it's necessary in your area, because home care, you don't pay the person's meals, you don't pay the person's, so their ultimate incentive is not against nursing homes, but pushing that care back into the home first, into the community, into an assisted living, and ultimately, lastly, into a nursing home, which is the most expensive place to care. Now, you can argue, is there people getting, adequate care in the CPR? Their assumption overall is that, in general terms, there are people getting services in a nursing home that don't need to be in a nursing home. That's their overall principle.
Thanks.
And so that's why they want the downsizing.
Any other questions?
Anything else, Fred?
No, nothing else.
I'd like to have Tony, you remember Tony? Explain what his function is in the nursing home business. I think that would be interesting for the rest of the people to understand where you're coming from.
Well, pretty much day and night I live the nursing home world, that's right. I work for Whiffley, we're a CPA firm. I'm an accountant by trade, I am not a CPA, and pretty much day in and day out I go from facility to facility to help them try to figure out how to stay in business. That's pretty much my role.
Thank you.
All right, item 2 on the business items is resolution to determine the future of the St. Croix Health Center nursing home. Everybody has, I believe, in front of them on the computers, the resolution that was, I believe, was passed at the last Health and Human Services Board with on my sheet, lines 28, 29 are left blank. It lists 3 options. Fred, do you want to summarize that?
Just briefly, the direction, as I understood it from the Health and Human Services Board on September 10th, was to work with Corporation Council to draft a resolution that was structured in such a way to get all 3 options to the County Board of Supervisors, as that is the governing entity that would have final policy authority regarding the future of the St. Croix Health Center. So the blank is left there purposely for that to be a decision to be rendered at the October 2nd County Board meeting. What we also did then is attach some summary considerations with regard to option 1, option 2, and option 3 that are attached to the resolution, so that County Board Supervisors would have an opportunity to get information about the resolution beforehand. Our intent would also be at that meeting to have Larry Lester provide an updated presentation so that the full county board can hear detail about the options that the Health and Human Services Board heard on September 10th and updates that were presented today.
All right, so again, as I was not at the last meeting, my understanding of the minutes is that the motion was made to close, that motion failed.
Well, the motion was to draft a resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Not to close it.
Thank you for correction. I'll say what's the pleasure of everybody has read through the options. Anyone, any comments?
How do you want to handle discussion? Do you want a motion? Or?
Well, do we want a motion to go forward to the county board, one of these options, or do we want to leave it pretty much as it is and have the county board, the full county board, choose the option? What is the preference? Again, I wasn't there at the last meeting, so I apologize. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I can't, other than reading the minutes.
I think it's our responsibility, this board's responsibility, to make a recommendation to the full board. So I think today, the purpose of today's meeting is for us to make a vote on what we're going to recommend. That's our responsibility. Let's do that.
All right, do you want to vote on each of these options, or do we want to, well, maybe that's the route to go. Start with option 1, take a roll call vote. Do you want more debate, more discussion?
Yeah, I think more discussion.
I think more discussion, yes.
Let's actually maybe start off with the option of closing. To me, the decision is either whether we're in the business or not. If a motion is made to not sell or not to close, that means we're in the business, and we need to figure out from the other 2 options where we go from here. So I think the most important decision for not only this board, but also for the county board is, are we in the business or not? And that's what I would recommend, is to start off with that. And I'll state right off, I'm against selling, and I'm against closing the nursing home. I believe it can be run more efficiently. I think people have spoken loudly, even though it was not a binding referendum. They most definitely gave their feedback that they want to stay in the business. So that is my position, and I'll open it to the rest of the board.
And I would like to counterpoint that. Over since the year 2000, and we found out why due to this average nursing home cost thing, evidently, to the best of my knowledge, the county nursing home has lost $21 million. Over this period of time, We've seen the private sector step up their efforts in this area. They built new nursing homes, one in Richmond, one in Osceola. There's 9 for privates in St. Croix County as we speak, and they all tend to get full and evidently do an adequate and/or good job. Through this whole scenario, the county has gone from evidently 120 beds down to 50. I mean, we can blame politics, we can blame whatever reasons, but the bottom line of it, we can call it 5-star, we can call it whatever. They've lost $21 million, and the county is competing against private sector companies that are hiring people and paying taxes. I am not an uncompassionate person. I want people to get the best care, as does everybody. Well,
come on now. All right, that's...
You can say what you want, that's fine. I guess the other part of this is I feel my fiduciary duty as a county board member is to keep taxes at a minimum and have services that are required. This is not a mandated service, having the county being in the nursing home. It is not something they have to do. It appears the private sector is doing it much better than the county is on a fiscal responsibility basis. I don't like some of what I'm saying here, but I just think it's the trend of the nursing home is down. I mean, if it was to go any lower in occupancy than the numbers we're seeing, the losses are to mount. The projection to the year 2020 is that the losses will continue to rise at the nursing home. With all those, they're facts. I mean, it's all on paper. We've all seen it all. I just can't sustain and support keeping this nursing home open as a taxpayer and asking other people, even if it's 20 bucks, the private sector is doing it very well, better than the county is. So I would be counter to your comment. I would be voting to close.
Any other comments? Any other board members?
Yeah, since the microphone's on, I'll make mine. I have a question for Director Johnson. What is the empty bed report, since I was in the last meeting for this empty bed report?
I do not have that document in front of me, but what I do have is the information that Larry put in the PowerPoint. It just take me a moment. I'm saying the September report, which would make sense because we're not through September. But the June through August average vacancy was 73.2 beds.
Wait, say that again, Greg?
The average vacant beds in the county from June through August was 73.2. That was provided on packet page 6 of the information that was presented to the Health and Human Services Board on September 10th.
So across the county, on average, there's 73 beds available.
Yeah, we use the 3 months, so
So
they're
they're
up
only 3 months.
and down.
Yeah.
And so you don't just pick 1 month to pick on, you looked at 3, and the average for those 3 was 73 empty beds, and that's.
So the statement that all the beds are full in the county was just not true. When I went to Nursing Home Compare, the Medicare site, and typed in my zip code, 54016, as it asked, it said there are 22 facilities within 25 miles of your zip code, all of whom take Medicare and Medicaid. So I do think there are adequate beds available and adequate facilities available. As to the point about the referendum, it is an advisory referendum, and I do take it into advisement. And one of the things that's never mentioned about that referendum is that there was one community where one individual went around and spent his own money and time and went door to door with the actual facts of how much the nursing home was costing us and how much it was losing. In that community, after that 2 weeks, the referendum failed in that community. Okay? So to say that 2/3 of county residents are in favor of it is just not true. Plus, not everyone voted. So when the facts are out, there is not the support for it. To say that it is unchristian to close, if you want to go to the moral issue, I'm happy to go there. Is it moral to take hard-earned tax dollars and spend it on a business model that both Director Johnson and Trent Fast, our consultants say is unsustainable and built to fail. Is that wrong? Is that good for the community? Is that good for the county? Is that good for the people of Baldwin? Is it good for the people of Hammond and Roberts? Another point that was made was, well, it's only $20. I was taught by my parents that if you're not willing to save $1, you'll never save 10 or 100. I've had a number of politicians over the years say, well, come on, this is only going to cost you your coffee money. Well, my coffee money was gone a long time ago. Okay? We have roads to pay for. We have libraries to pay for. We have schools to pay for. Everybody wants my coffee money. It's gone. We need to look at where we can save money, whether it's $1 or $1 million. That's our fiduciary responsibility as board members, to wisely spend taxpayer dollars. We just found out that this coming year, equalized values for this year have gone down another 6%. That's going to put more pressure on our budget. It's not going to be $7 million a year. It's going to be somewhere around in the 60s, right, Pat? Around 60 million. So there's going to be more pressure to pay for services. We cannot afford to be spending money on a losing enterprise that is competing with private enterprise, and they're doing it at lower costs. We got the audit. It's $280 per resident day versus $189 for other government-run facilities in this geographic area, and it's even less for the privates. So we're over $100 per resident day more expensive. It doesn't make sense to be continued to fund this. So I will go to the moral issue on that. When you're losing money on every resident you have, the more residents you have in there, the more you're going to lose. So we went down to 50 beds. That's easy to understand. If you want to be, people in this room, if you want to be angry with someone about this whole issue of closing the nursing home or not, talk to the union reps here. We know where that extra cost has come from, salary and benefits. They're being paid much more. Any other comments, or you want to be talking?
I thought there was no personal attack.
No feedback. The board, we've already had open comments, we're just sticking to the board.
The other thing, you know, comments when Fred said he's not compassionate, that he is compassionate. Some jeers there. This is an emotional issue for me. On October 16th, it'll be 1 year anniversary of my mother dying in a nursing home with me holding her hand as she took her last breath. Okay, I spent hours there with her. I got to know the day shift and the night shift. I got to see what the CNAs do when they wake the patients up in the morning. I got to see what they deal with. I got to see what they deal with when the patients are ready to go to bed at night. I saw what the LPNs did. I got to know the therapists. I got to know the administrators. So I do know a bit about this, and they do a wonderful, tough job caring for senior citizens who can't care for themselves. So I'm not approaching this with some cold heart, but I have to approach it from the fiduciary responsibility of the board to wisely spend tax dollars. And when we have a losing enterprise like this, we have to look at that. We have to look at that. So I do agree, we need to close our facility. We need to have the courage to make that decision.
Yeah, I would like to, first of all, respond to the referendum and the people voting on that. I was disappointed in how the referendum was worded, because I think it intentionally misled the public into thinking that the nursing home would only require $330,000 of taxpayer money. It's way beyond that. So although the people voted for that referendum, they were uninformed and/or intentionally misled. That's wrong.
Well, who wrote the referendum?
So you know better.
Who wrote the first one?
All right, we don't want to get into this banter back and forth. We just, it's going to degrade into chaos if we get into this shoving match back and forth. So we need to, the board is going to have their discussions. Public has had the opportunity to make their comments, and I have to stay with just the board speaking.
Let me answer one other point that was made. The county nursing home is not the place of last resort. We have Medicare and Medicaid, and then we have county. The county may be the payer of last resort. The county nursing home is never the place of last resort. I was paying for my mother's house. We lost the farm in the 80s, so I paid for all of that. And she qualified for Medicare and Medicaid. She was not asked when she needed to go to the nursing home, well, you have to go to this home. She was asked, where do you want to go? Where would you like to go, Teresa? And she made her decision. It's the same here. You're not forced to go somewhere. So it is not a place of last resort. A lot of people think that that misconception is out there. When I talk to people about this issue, it's amazing the amount of misinformation there is out there. But when you explain to them that that is not the case, when you explain to them the true cost of the facility, almost to a person, people say, you know what, now I understand him. I was wrong in my vote. I can see where he wants to go.
I've been on this board for quite a long time, right around 15 years. I've watched what's happened to our nursing home in the last 15 years. There was quite a number of bids when I first came on the board. And we worked very hard over that period of years to try to make the nursing home profitable. In 2007, I think it was 2007, when Frank Robinson came aboard, he had a set up to have the nursing home draw no levy in 2015. That was in the private sector. We hired Frank Robinson. He was a super guy. He seemed like he had things under control. And I'm not going to go with the fact that we have to close the nursing home. There's people out there that earn money in St. Croix County. They pay their taxes in St. Croix County. So what I'm saying here is that my thought would be with a kind of personnel that we could find, like Frank Robinson, I think we could make this a lot better off than what we're looking at today.
Yeah, I have a question for Fred. Are we aware of how many beds are used for rehab purposes? Like for a patient coming from a hospital?
At our facility?
Yes.
Yes, we have, I mean, it fluctuates, and I'd have to have Cindy verify, but it ranges anywhere from 3 to 10, depending on the referral sources, and I don't know what our rehab census is today. Cindy might be able to speak to that more directly.
We have 5 right now.
We have 5.
Oh, okay. Well, I might as well continue. I am in favor of building a new nursing home. I think we need to do something different. We've looked at everything else, and the county board has never allowed us to do something different. And I think that's what we need to do before we give it up.
I'm not going to force you. Does anybody else have any?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'd speak to that point. When I was talking to the editor of Midnight at Long-Term Care News, Elizabeth, she's the editor, I asked her if our situation here, after outlining it, was any different than other facilities across the country. And she said, no, your textbook. Back in the 70s, a lot of buildings were built. They weren't kept up, as we know. Capital improvements were not kept up with. There's a lot of capital improvements that will be needed for the building. She said that's nationwide. Facilities don't really make money off as standalone facilities, as we know. Larry said you need some kind of senior living or senior assisted living, some kind of, I don't even call it traffic stream or revenue stream, whether it's private or government. So she said, no, you're pretty much the same, and you're not going to survive with your current model. So I would agree that we need a new model, or we need to get out of the business. There's just not enough savings. Even if we ask the people here, the union employees, to just say, let's just throw your contract out and you'll just take drastic cuts. With the current downward pressure on Medicare and Medicaid and the facility the way it is, it's still not going to make it. I mean, we can't make it. So we need either a new model or to close. So then I look at the new model. Shall we build a new facility? And I have to ask, why would I do that? It'd be like building a McDonald's across from McDonald's. Private industry is doing that, and doing it well and doing it at a profit. So why would I ask the taxpayers then to vote for a bond issue to go into debt and mortgage their home? Because that's what you do when you vote for a bond issue. You're mortgaging your home, you have to pay it. Why would I ask them to do that when private industry is willing to do that? So that's my question when you, to Deb, or anyone else who supports that position. Why would I want to go down that road? And I'd like an answer from anyone who, Deb, or anyone who thinks we should.
Well, I think Larry talked to that at the last meeting. Those nursing homes that have taken that step, have done something different with their facility, they are basically full. And that's where the revenue comes from.
Yeah, but my question though is why would we do that as taxpayers when private industry can do that? You either believe in private industry, you either believe in our capitalist system, I guess, or you don't. You either think that government should do everything, or you think that private enterprise should do it. So why? That's my question. Not that it would make money or anything. I think it's a better business model, no question. But why should we do it? Why should we ask the taxpayer to do it when private industry is already doing it and willing to do it?
My response to that, if I can cut in,
sure,
is simply, I'm not smarter than my constituents. My constituents have voted for this to continue the nursing home business. I'm the representative, and that's how I'm going to vote.
Do you believe, Fred, that you believe your constituents knew the full story?
My
Do you
constituents
believe they were absolutely informed?
No, we're stupid.
Yes, my constituents are informed. They want this nursing home to stay open. They want
Regardless of
to
cost.
continue in this business.
I understand you guys do, that's good. But what about the rest of the people in the county? What about the people in Leonard, Baldwin, Hudson?
Please bear with me.
What about those people?
As I believe it was mentioned, there was only one district in this county that did not pass the referendum.
Based on a referendum that said it's going to cost you $330,000.
And the residents of that district who knew the real story turned it down. They voted it down.
Roger, you want to say something?
I think when that referendum went through, it was because we were at $666,000 for support for the nursing home. And they opted to do it half of that, and that's why that came up that $333,000. Because the nursing home, at that point, we were still looking at reducing the cost of the nursing home. And I believe Fred was there, and he'll attest to that. That was why we were at $660,000 instead of 300. So it got cut to half at the board meeting. That's what happened there, and that's why that referendum went out.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So just so I understand, so the losses were at $660,000, but you told the public that it was going to take $330,000.
Half of that.
That's the budget, because that's what the budget was showing.
I don't understand that.
The budget was showing $330,000 for the following year. We had made, basically unions had made concessions, about $600,000 concessions, I believe. It turns out the non-union did not. We had Frank Robinson, who was a private, basically our employee, came up with a 5-year plan. He's moved on, and since then we've been with the contract position, which is costing us substantially more money. We can and should be running this facility more efficiently. And that's the path. In April, I talked about having a suggestion box, working with our employees to make this a more efficient operation. And it turned out the suggestions that came in from that organization was about additional $600,000 savings. I think we need to continue working with our employees to make this a more efficient operation.
Where will you find those efficiencies? We had the county administrator, we've had the finance director looking over this past month at efficiencies. What have you found? I mean, we're nowhere close to 660, we're nowhere close. We know we're losing. You can look at the numbers back 10 years. I totaled them up, it's over $14 million on this latest sheet, and it's projected to lose another $22 million over the next 10 years. Where are we going to find savings that will mitigate those losses? Can you tell me? Can Tabitha? Pat?
Through our financial analysis, we started with looking at the fixed costs, basically non-staff, and we went through and did the revised census and the revised payer mix and looked at all fixed costs to try to figure out what our target was. And then now we're looking at wages and benefits as the next option to have to reduce costs.
And what, do you have any idea of what your final figure will be?
We, on the September 10th meeting, had the revised financial that was out there, and we were at a $765,000 mark. If you count the indirect costs, the capital cost, and all those other items at a 43 bed, it was 1.5 million.
Still, it's going to cost 1.5 million.
So we shaved it as much as we can, and we're still losing $1 million.
I don't know if that's an accurate statement. So if we close the facility December 31st, are we going to save the taxpayers 1.5? Indirect costs will still be just outcharged to somebody else.
Some of the indirect costs, yes, will still be there. We'll save probably indirect costs of $50,000. We will not have to expend the capital improvement items.
All of them?
They're for the nursing home, the capital improvement costs.
So we're down to 1.4 million.
But if that building is used for something else, do we have to make those improvements?
It would depend on what,
we can't assume.
you'd have to repurpose the building for some other use. It's designed for a nursing home. So if you're going to use it for offices or something, there would be construction costs involved, I would assume.
So there's going to be costs regardless. So again, there's no savings there.
That's not what you said. Come on.
What? Are you guys prepared to make a motion? We can go back and forth for the next 3 hours.
Right.
Sure, I'm prepared to make a motion. I make a motion, we recommend to the board to close or sell.
Mr. Chair.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Call the roll.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification with
Sure.
Corporation Counsel? If the way the motion is drafted, would it actually be, need to be a motion to revise the resolution?
Correct. The resolution as written indicates that this HHS board would refer all 3 options to the county board. So if your motion is to just go forward with the option to close or sell, then you would have to make a motion essentially to amend the resolution as written, to take the other 2 options out of it. As written, the resolution says that all 3 options would go to the county board for voting. So,
Okay. So I would recommend that, or make a motion that we, each board member, place their vote on one of the 3 options, as the resolution is written.
So that it goes to the full county board with a tally of the 3 options?
Yep.
Yeah, so all 3 options go to the board, but there would be a tally from the Health and Human Services Board of what each individual member, you know, just 3, 2, and 3.
Let's make sure, let's make sure that everybody's clear on option 1 is, build a new nursing home. Go ahead, you want to describe the 3 options?
Yep, so option 1 is building a new nursing home. So option 1, building a new nursing home. Option 2, close/sell nursing home. Option 3, remain in current building with expense reductions. So your motion is that we tally the options, and that full resolution goes to the board, the full county board, with a tally at the HHS board. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Is there any discussion?
another motion.
Oh, you're right, so is there?
We withdraw that, or
I'll withdraw my first.
Okay, and seconds, well,
Yep,
all right.
withdraw that.
Thank you, Roger. So we have a motion, we have a second, is there discussion? Call the roll.
How do you want to do that? Just by number or
How do you want to do that?
yes or no? Or
We can go by number, right? Let's
Option
just
one.
clarify,
Option one.
as the person votes, why don't you clarify just to confirm that they've chosen the right option?
So you want to go, I'd say option 2, close or sell.
close or sell? Fred York,
Option 2, close or sell.
Chris Colbert,
Option 2, close or sell.
Tom Oxford,
Option 2, close or sale.
Roger Larson,
Option 3, remain current.
Fred Horn,
Option 1,
Builders, Bill,
yes, build a new nursing home.
okay, Leanne Bernstein,
Option 3.
remain open. Deb Rasmussen,
Option 1.
Bill. There's 2 for number 1, there's 4 for number 2, and there's 2 for number 3.
Right. That full resolution goes to the full county board. For the October 2nd meeting. All right.
And then Fred, we would just need a motion and a second to approve the resolution with the amendments with those numbers in them to go forward.
All right, so who made the original motion? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
All right.
We'll do what Heather said.
All right. I'll second. And you'll second that. Is there discussion? Call the roll.
Tim Wood,
Yes.
Fred York,
Yes.
Chris Colbert,
Yes.
Tom Oxford,
Yes.
Roger Larson,
Yes.
Fred Horn,
Yes.
Leanne Bernstein,
Yes.
Deb Rasmussen.
Yes.
All right, there's announcements and correspondence. Does anybody have any announcements? All right. With that, we are adjourned. Date of next meeting is October 1st, 2012, back in Richmond at 8:30 a.m.